All right, so you've each been given two lovely pieces of paper. Put them together, please. And your first task is to fold them in half. Now, don't worry if they're not exactly the same size together, that's fine. Fold them in half once, and then once you've pressed hard, you're going to fold them in half again. And when you open them back up again, you should see that both of them have been divided into 4 sections. So you now have 2 pieces of paper, each divided into 4 sections. That's 8 sections total, but we need 7. So what you're going to do is choose one of your pieces, and on the last rectangle, you're going to apply glue. Then you are going to glue the 2 pieces together, and you want to go right up to that little edge. So that what you're doing is taking your 2 pieces and combining them into one. You've overlapped one of the sections, so now instead of having 8, you now have 7 sections. Press securely so that the glue attaches. And the next thing you need to do is fix your accordion fold so that it goes forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards. So a couple of them will be in the wrong direction for now. You're going to fix that fold so you have a nice accordion. You're going to be storing this in the pocket in the back of your sketchbook closed. So make sure the accordion is closed, and make sure also that you put the cap back on your glue stick. So now that I've finished preparing the accordion, it's now time to start getting ready with the tracing. So I've printed an image for each of you, and you're each getting a piece of tracing paper. You need to make sure that your tracing paper is smaller, just a little bit smaller than your image. So if you need to rip it or cut it, you can do that. And the reason you need to do this is because you're going to need to tape your tracing paper onto your image. And the only way to do that is if the tracing paper is a little bit smaller than the original image. You're going to grab a piece of tape. You can grab 2 if you're worried about it moving while you're tracing. And place those pieces of tape somewhere where it's not blocking your image. If it is blocking your image, let me know and we can find a way around it. And just a reminder, you're not actually taping anything to the table. You're only taping the tracing paper to the image. And I'm now ready to start my tracing. So I'm grabbing my pencil, and all I need to do is trace every line that I want to be copied onto my accordion paper. So for my accordion, I'm not going to include those lines for my ice cream cone. I'm going to add those manually when I'm ready to for certain elements like texture. But I'm not going to do it for all of them. So I'm not tracing that part. I'm not planning on including it or transferring it onto my accordion. So I'm only tracing the pieces that I want to include. All right, I'm done with my tracing. Now's the most challenging part. It's removing the tracing paper from that background paper. And another challenging piece, I now need to take that tape off of the tracing paper very carefully and flip it onto the back side of the tracing paper, both pieces of tape. Carefully to the back side of the tracing paper. All right, now my next step is to start transferring my image. So the reason why I flipped over the tape is because now the side with the pencil on it is touching my accordion paper. And all I need to do to transfer my image is go over my tracing lines. Now, as you can see, my tape was in the way a little bit, so I lifted it up just to get that small little stem of the cherry. And all I'm doing is retracing my tracing lines. And again, the pencil side of the tracing paper should be touching the accordion paper. That's how it's going to transfer the image from the tracing paper onto the accordion. Let's have a look. All right, here's the magic of tracing paper. As I carefully take it off, you can see that it transferred the image below. Now, it didn't transfer it perfectly, but that's okay. It's better than having to start from scratch. So as you can see, you're then going to have to go over your tracing lines and just make them a little bit bolder. Once you've done that, you're ready to move on to the next section. So you can actually take off the tracing paper from where it is and move it over to the next section and do the exact same thing again. But eventually, after 2 or 3 sections, you're going to notice that the image is starting to transfer much lighter than it did the first time. If that happens to you, my suggestion is then to start using the other side of the tracing paper because now both sides have pencil on them. So how are you going to do that? You're again going to carefully remove the tape. Then you're going to flip over the tracing paper, and then you're going to reapply the tape. So now the side that you've been tracing on top of this whole time is now touching the background paper, the accordion paper. And then start retracing your tracing again. Now, before you guys all just start flipping your tracing paper back and forth all willy-nilly, there's something you need to know. If your image can only be displayed one way, for example, a Nike swoosh, if it's backwards, it's not going to look like a Nike swoosh. Well, then you cannot keep flipping it over and using the other side, because as you're going to see right now, if I flip it over, the Nike swoosh will then be backwards. The same goes for any letters or numbers. So keep that in mind. If you're doing something that can only face one direction, then stick with only tracing one side of the tracing paper.